Hello and welcome to Stage Matters, the podcast that gets right into the heart of what happens when artists take the stage. I'm your host, Arvind Murli, and it's great to have you with me. For any artist, the act of performance is a transformation. It's where countless hours of dedication meet the unpredictable energy of a live moment. It's about more than the art itself. It's about delivery, the connection, the vulnerability, and the sheer power of being present. On this podcast, we are cutting through the noise to understand the true essence of what makes a performance soar, what challenges performers face, and how they consistently deliver those transcendent moments. I'll be chatting with amazing artists and performers, from seasoned veterans to rising stars, to hear their stories directly. We'll discuss the highs, the lows, the techniques, and the mindset that defines their approach to performance. If you ever wondered what it truly feels like to command a stage, or what goes into those breathtaking artistic moments, you're in the right place. Let's pull back the curtain and dive into Stage Matters. Our guest today is a seriously talented singer who's lent his voice to some massive film tracks and also got some incredible independent music out there. He's also a brilliant composer and a lyricist. He's the one and only Vijaynarain. Hi Vijay, and welcome to Stage Matters.
Hi Arvind, thanks for having me on your podcast, and it's great that you're starting something that's dedicated to the live performance art.
So let's get straight into it. So what drew you into performing?
Parents. They pushed me when I was like 3 or 4 years old when I was in school, and I think I would have been on stage like reciting Bharatiyar songs or whatever. But I grew up learning Carnatic music for a bit, like in bits and pieces for about 4 years totally by the time I was in my 12th standard. And a lot of it was centered around performing live or performing in a class, right? So in front of people. So I think that was the roots. But obviously you see people around when you're, as a musician, when your career graph, starts to take, shape. You see people performing, and the high of, live performance when, I think through college when I would perform for like smaller audiences, that was really the spark. And, I saw like bands performing in culturals, wanted to be a part of that.
So you said like what drew you to it first? What keeps you coming back to it?
It's the intimate connection that you have with the audiences there, because in that moment you're human, you're flawed, and you are the artist in you is unfiltered there. At least I don't like use autotune live, so I would like to say that.
Yeah. Can you describe to me a like pivotal performance that you saw, either as a performer or as an artist, which has like kind of
as in something I witnessed?
Or you witnessed, or you were part of, whichever.
Okay, see, something I witnessed would be 2001, I think, the Unity of Light concert by Rahman in Chennai.
Okay.
So my dad bought a new bike and he got like a free pass with it, and I went alone for that concert, and I was like 2 months away from like my board exams.
Okay.
And so that was incredible because you had like all of these massive legends you've only heard of, watching them live for the first time, and massive crowds as well. That was probably my biggest concert experience and my first concert experience, I think. So that is my that's left a lasting memory on me. So yeah, that was one. And in my own personal journey would be 2023 Malaysia. That was the first time I performed my film songs in front of a crowd of like 11,000 people in the Axiata Arena, and that was the biggest crowd I've performed.
This is for whom?
Santosh Narayan's live gig, and I was one of the singers.
Okay.
And I had just made the decision to quit my day job in Australia after 8 years and come and do this. And so to actually get that validation from like such a big crowd singing along, and the fact that everybody knew my song. So that was really nice.
Super. So how has your understanding of performance evolved over your career?
That's a very good question, because you get inspired by various acts that you see and you start emulating them. And then you realize that, there is always a strive. You're always striving for perfection when it comes to live performance. Because like I said, there is a lot of room for error, and, it immediately shows. But then over the years, you also, pick up some techniques, pick up some, just in the choice of songs or the choice of phrases that you want to do. There's a lot of learning that happens the more you perform. And I think, the more live shows I've performed, I've also sort of understood what my healthy vocal range and what my kind of songs are. And also what works with the audience. So the feedback is instant most of the time. So that also gives you like a good rough idea of, what kind of music you can perform to them. And that has actually helped me sneak in a lot of my independent stuff that they've not heard before in my live gigs, and, sort of also get like a decent response and some curiosity around it.
Okay, wonderful. So how do you prepare for a performance? Do you have like some specific rituals or some things that you do?
I don't really have any specific rituals, but I like to get in at least 2 rehearsals if it's my show, just to make sure that everybody is like, perfectly like ready for the gig. And I also don't like to go unplanned between songs, in the sense that I also like to like chart out what's going to happen between 2 songs. If I'm speaking or if there's going to be silence and those kind of things. So we don't want to be like, setting our patches, and you don't want like, the keyboard tones or like somebody playing like the riff of the song just before starting the song. So those are the kind of things I learned also by being part of larger shows like Santosh. So I usually have like, my bassist is my band leader. And he usually is on our earpieces telling us what's happening next. So to the audience, it looks like it's like a seamless transition.
Is that Naveen?
Yes, of course, it's Naveen Napier.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything that you do like on the day of the show or the previous day of the show, like something that your diet and...
Yes. So I was just going to talk about diet and I missed that. So I have acid reflux. So I try not to eat too fully before the show. And I usually don't have a meal at least like, within 4 hours of starting a show. So I still do like have hot liquids, but I don't eat heavily just before the show. I know for a lot of people, like going on a relatively full stomach is helpful, but I usually go on an empty stomach. That's the only ritual I follow. And I usually give my voice rest in the mornings, because in the mornings, I always freak out when I wake up and, my voice sounds a bit hoarse, and that's like just the nature of my voice. So that is one thing. The other thing is I don't have hot water when I'm performing, because it dries my throat up. So I prefer like normal temperature water.
Okay, that's interesting. So obviously you have skill and technique and you're trained for it and all. But is there something beyond skill and technique, something more like, I don't know if I don't use the word spiritual usually, but something like that which is more personal to you in the whole performance aspect?
I think, look, performing itself is a deeply spiritual thing, if you ask me, because when you're in the zone, it's not just connecting with your audience, but you're also you're tapping into something within yourself that's bringing out sort of the best in you, and you are hyper focused on what you're doing then. So it's a sort of meditation, if you may, right? But for me, there are moments when you just feed off the audience's energy, and that really helps with your improvisations as well. Like you are inspired in that moment and something comes off, you cannot plan for that. And when those kind of planned things go well, I really like it. And I wouldn't say like they go well all of the time, but when the energy is there and you can do something that's like slightly on top of what you've already planned, and sometimes it works, and it's a great feeling.
Since you just said improvisation, how do you like balance improvisation with the planned aspects? Do you like leave space for it?
We pre-plan the spaces where there is room for improv. So if there's like call and response kind of a thing, we may say that there's like 6 instances of call and response that will happen during this song. And then we'll be like, okay, your turn. But then what we do within that is up to us. And sometimes when there's like audience interaction, we also plan for that, but we leave it a little more flexible, saying we'll feed off the energy and then we'll just count in and continue. So those kind of things.
Does your identity or your personal history inform your performance?
It absolutely does, because like I said, I've been also incorporating some of my independent music into my gigs. And so just the flow of the songs is I like to tell a story through it. So it's heavily based on my personal experience. The independent songs that I write, they are all based on experiences that I've had in the last few years. And so there is a sort of chronology in how I present the songs as well. And sometimes even film songs like Pore Na Pore, for example, leaving the house and going out, right? My apartment got robbed, right? So that's a nice story arc actually, because the song talks about displacement from home. And when I actually went back to perform that song in Sydney, I spoke about this feeling of home and how this song came back as sort of a return gift for like leaving the place. And now that I'm back, it completes the story arc. So these kind of things happen. So there is definitely like some amount of, storytelling that I try to incorporate.
Wonderful. What's the most challenging aspect for you?
I think it's, I'd like to say it's like vocal techniques or preparation, but I really think it's the promotional aspect of it. Because a lot of the shows, how it is, right? The onus is also on the artist to make sure that people fill up the places. And I just get flustered, be it even independent releases or live music. It's just one of those things that I'd rather let people do and have an ecosystem do it. But, I'll have to get to a point where I can just delegate it to other people. So right now, till you see the people show up in a show, it's always like, okay, will people come? Do they know me? So those kind of things, right? So I think promotions are the toughest aspect.
So do you have like some kind of strategy to navigate this thing?
Not really. I'm still figuring it out, because different shows I mean, I do play all sorts of shows. Like I said, I'm part of like Santosh Narayanan show, which is like you're talking about thousands of people.
Yeah.
And then I'm also playing to like 60 people in an intimate venue. So once I am there and the audience is there, it doesn't matter what the numbers are to me. Even if it's 10 people, there are 10 people who have come to listen to the music, so you perform to them. But it's just still up to that point. You also want your promoter and your organizer to be happy, right? So that's what is the bit that gives artists anxiety. So I just go all out with like whatever I can do with social media, word of mouth and all of that. But that's about it.
Okay. I want to talk about risk. What do you like to take risks in your performance, or is it like you like to play it safe and make sure
what would you define as a risk? Can you give me an example? I
don't know. Suddenly, like doing a song that is not planned for, or doing something which is totally wild, which the audience might not expect.
I think from an audience perspective, yes, I do take risks in the kind of music that I play to my audiences, because like I said, I feed the audiences songs that they may never have heard, like unreleased music. At least 3 or 4 songs that I perform are unreleased because the release process is cumbersome. But with my band, I don't really like throw them off guard by like playing, suddenly suggesting something on the fly that they may not be prepared with. Occasionally it may happen if there's like a request for it and it feels valid.
Okay.
But even then I try to make sure that, there's at least one person is comfortable playing, or you just do it a cappella. But it depends on, I don't like do it every show. So I would say I'm like generally like I manage
on the
that.
Safe side.
Yeah, on the safe side. Yeah.
Okay. We all know unexpected things happen on the show. Fuck ups happen, screw ups happen. How do you navigate that? And do you think they can be generative, as in like a mistake can lead to something better, or something new?
I think mistakes can lead to something new, because every show experience is learning. You definitely like learn from like what happens, and as musicians, we will always have shows that get cancelled like 2 days before for whatever reasons, and so it is extremely disappointing, because it's not just the financial loss of it, right? You're looking forward to like performing, and then
my next weekend's show got postponed.
Oh well, look, I had my bags packed to Canada, and I was supposed to fly out the next day, and then the show didn't happen, and we got to know like a week later. So those kind of things happen. So it is quite soul crushing when that happens. But like I said, there is definitely learning to it, in the sense that you also understand how to communicate next with organizers, and what kind of emails to like have, what kind of agreements to make. So those kind of things have been learnings for sure. But from like a creative aspect, I feel like suddenly when time frees up, you do tend to like want to use it for musical purposes. And so sometimes I end up spending that time like composing something new, and that's actually helped.
What about on-stage mistakes and stuff?
On-stage mistakes, you just have to like be nimble and recover from it. So I don't let it bog me down, because if you start like thinking about it, fixating on it, then that can ruin the rest of the flow. So I usually like try to like improvise, or just sometimes if it goes to the point where you've started the song on a wrong pitch and you're struggling, it's okay to stop and admit it to the audience. And then
that's
start again. So I've done that.
Okay.
So in fact, recently at a house gig, like an intimate gig, started off a song in a completely wrong scale.
Okay.
And I realized that when I reached like the charnam, because it was too high and I couldn't hit it.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, looks like I've started the song on a wrong scale. Let's do it again.
Okay.
And then you just do it. So
but would you do that in a 11,000 people show?
In a 11,000 people show, I would not be the stakeholder making that call. But if I make a mistake, I will own up to it. And I think it's better to own up to it and restart than wing it, unless it's one of those improvisational kind of things where you can actually recover from it. So I think it's a bit of a creative call at that point.
Okay.
So yeah.
So let's talk about the audience. What is your perception of the audience? Are they like passive observers, or are they like active participants, or something else totally?
So I think that varies from gig to gig, set list to set list, and location matters a lot.
Okay.
Because if you're playing at a pub gig, you expect the audience to be responsive and a bit boisterous, and you feed off that energy. But at the same time, if you're playing at a more intimate, formal gig, then you don't really get that sort of, feedback. It's more like, they're like attentive, but they're quiet. And then there are, especially like these gigs that I used to do in Sydney, where I would be like one among other singers singing film songs. You would find that, these are all typically like some Tamil associations organizing it. And so typically all the expensive tickets would go to like, the families of the organizers are like basically senior people, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all older people sitting in the front rows who will be absolutely stone-faced and just stare at you when you're belting like a fun number.
Yeah.
Right? And so you just have to like play the audience on the basis of what happens there. And then I remember once I asked like people at the back to come to the front, and people really got offended because they paid $70 versus like $25. And it's a case to case basis. But I do like when the audience is responsive, and my set list is a mix of, you know, songs that people can respond to. There's like a lot of interaction in certain songs, but certain songs you just want to like sit back. At the end of the song, you want the audience to like acknowledge it. So it's a mix of those things. But towards the end, obviously, you want everybody like, you know, participating and just at least like grooving along. So I like the audience that's fairly interactive. And I also talk a lot between my like during my set because of the storytelling aspect of it. So I like it when people actually like respond to those things.
So do you recall any like time in your performance career that the audience made it so magical for you? Also as a performer, also as an audience?
As an audience, I think Jacob Collier's first concert that I went to, this was in Sydney before he won those Grammys, right? So it was like a small concert at the Sydney State Theatre or something. There must have been like 200 people in it. And he did the what he's now famous for, like the whole, you know, multi-part harmony thing. And you could tell the audience was just music geeks. Everybody could sing to some extent in key. That was a truly magical experience because it was unlike anything I'd been part of. Personally, I'll just have to like think because there've been a lot of moments. But yeah, I'll think and get back to you on that.
How do you handle audience feedback? Like, does like negative feedback kind of make you want to change something, or positive feedback is like?
See, positive feedback obviously is extremely motivational, and especially when it comes for my independent music, because that's what audiences are discovering in that gig, right? So that is a great thing because that's validation that I'm doing something right. With negative feedback, it is I do take pains to actually think about what that feedback is and, you know, validate it. A lot of the feedback can be emotional sometimes, but some of the feedback can actually be useful because at the end of the day, you are finding that core audience of, I don't know, it could be 100 people. Tomorrow you want to grow that to 1,000 people, but that is the audience that is actually going to keep coming to your gigs, not somebody who you know, saw like a promoted reel and just flip through it. So you do want to take your audience feedback seriously. So I try to do that for sure. Like,
so do you like go back and tweak your set or your music?
I absolutely do. Like, especially when somebody tells me that, you know, a song is not working, I try to ask what doesn't work for them in it. And if it's valid, and then you can validate it with other people who came to the show as well. So that is actually, and today it's very democratized. You can actually like put a poll on Instagram saying which of these songs you want to see in my gig, and then take a call on it. So I think that's another feedback mechanism that actually works really well.
Like what's your thing on stage appearance and persona? Is it like, are you the same person on stage as you're off stage?
I think I am a slightly different, more excited and energetic person on stage than I am off it. And I also like to think my sense of humor somehow suddenly becomes better when I'm on stage. It's for the audience to decide, but you know, in that adrenaline rush, you feel like your jokes are all like hitting the spot and your songs are like, you're nailing it, right? So you have to be in that mind frame to be able to pull that gig off. So I do think I am in a better frame of mind for sure when I'm performing. So I like to like be happy when I'm performing.
What about like appearance? Do you like to dress up?
So this is interesting because I never thought of myself as somebody who would actually take pains to like dress up for a show. But when that Malaysia show happened, right, that's when I saw all the other singers during rehearsal. They were talking about what their costumes were going to be. And I just assumed I could like rock up in a jeans and t-shirt. But then when I saw the pains that everybody was taking, like for example, this other person, they had like 2 songs and they were talking about what their first song costume was going to be for the second. That's when I realized you should actually have like different costumes if you're singing 3 songs. And then unfortunately, I don't have a great fashion sense. So my sister thankfully came to help with that. And we did end up like curating a look for the stage and it worked really well. And I actually felt good about myself when I saw myself in the picture. So from then on, I decided, you know, it is good to put some thought into the appearance. I'm not saying I'm going to like suddenly become like extravagantly like a completely different person to look at, but I do, depending on the scale of the show again, like you don't want to like wear sunglasses in an intimate venue.
In a house show.
In a house show. So it's like that.
So I want to talk about broader impact of performing arts on society. What do you think is like unique in a live performance that cannot be recreated in any other medium?
The obvious answer is, of course, that recorded music can be edited any number of times before it's put out.
Yeah.
And the recording of a live show can also be edited.
Yeah.
But then in that moment when you're
In that-
singing
yeah.
live, I think that is your most unfiltered natural self, and that is the most intimate connection you have with your audience. And so I don't think that can ever be replaced by anything. Like, unless we are like cloning human beings, I don't think that's going to be one of those use cases that AI is going to satisfactorily fulfill.
Yeah.
So I feel like that will command a premium in the future, in my opinion. This whole actual human performance, like every other service where there is a human required, it's getting more expensive.
Correct.
Because AI can do it cheaper.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same, except this is not service, it's art.
Yeah. So that's actually what I was going to ask. In an increasingly digitized world, what's going to be the value of this in the future?
I think people are going to crave human connection more and more in the future. And music, performing arts will be one of those avenues where they will actually be able to get that connection. So at the end of the day, we are, the difference between us and AI is that we have souls and we need fodder for the soul. So I'm sure performing arts is not dying anytime soon. If anything, it'll actually, like I said, command a premium and it'll start becoming more valuable.
Is there anything like beyond entertainment? As in, is there any other purpose?
Absolutely. Like, art has always had a purpose beyond entertainment, which is it's a reflection of society, and it's a medium to convey thoughts. It's a medium to convey ideas. And I think music has always been that. So right now, the ideas I'm conveying are not anything revolutionary because they are about things that affect me and why I've written those songs. But I do feel like that is, like I said, like it's a medium of, change, if you may. So I think that is definitely, it's still having its impact, in various, even in short social media reels where there's original music, right?
Yeah.
People are making music about issues, about social causes and whatnot. So I think that's definitely there.
How do you define success or failure in a performance?
Success in a performance is basically no mistakes. Okay. The audience likes it. You get a lot of positive feedback. It generates more shows and everybody gets paid on time.
Okay. Okay. That's very straightforward.
Yeah, it's easy.
Okay. I wanted to touch upon some personal aspects.
Sure.
So, the starving musician, starving artist trope is very world famous.
Yeah.
And I don't think I know your background, you come from IT, this thing, but I know you've quit your job and gotten into performing and all that. So, what's your relationship with money when it comes to, how do you deal with it?
It's tricky, as you know. And while I may have quit my job, in the 2.5 years that I've been doing this full time, I did realize that, the money is not that easy to come by in shows, especially in a place like Chennai where, basically it's not like a city where there is a lot of money in the business of music. So you have to be nimble as an artist and find other sources of income, be it making ads, be it playback, basically multiple sources of income. And I also do a bit of writing, both creative and technical.
Okay.
So there are side income streams. So my advice usually to artists is to not just rely on one stream of income, especially when it comes to music, and do multiple things, because you're the best example for that. You've been doing so many other things outside of live performance. And I think it is also good because the moment that one source of income becomes your livelihood, then you start taking up work that you may not necessarily like for the sake of money, and then that starts to affect your creativity as well. So, and you need to be in a good mental space.
I think for me, it also that started later only, after I realized. We all have our challenges in life, personal struggles. So how do those things affect you? Do you suppose you had a bad day, a bad something in your relationship, and you have a show today? How do you deal with that?
That's a great question, because I kept saying you have to be happy to be able to perform well, but musicians they're humans at the end of the day, and you may have a bad day on the day of a show, and these things do affect your performance. But I think the moment you get on stage, you forget all that and you become one with the music. So I think it's just that commitment to the art that you need to have, or you need to have the boldness, or rather the sensibility to call the show off if something is affecting you so badly that you can't perform, rather than go and do a half-hearted job of it. because I feel like, and then own up to the consequences of it, be it financial or otherwise. But I feel like reputational consequences, people will always understand if you've like had a solid reason for not being able to show up. But financial consequences, of course, there's like you have to own up to it. So I think it's an individual call at the end of the day. Personally, I have had days when there's been like other things going on in life, a lot of anxiety basically. But I also feel like performing in that moment, it actually helps you like forget all those things for a bit. So for me, that's how it worked when I was really anxious. The moment I was on stage, I forgot all of that and I was just like performing. It all comes back right after the show is over, but at least for those few hours, you're like in a good space. So yeah,
we've heard all these stories about like legendary rock musicians like not getting on stage without like alcohol or drugs, or other stimulants. What's your relationship with that? What's your opinion? How has there been a evolution?
Like I said, for me, I get freaked out by like excess food before the show. So I don't think I'm ever like trying anything else before my show, because I don't trust myself to like be in my senses. And as it is, I'm like over enthusiastic when I'm on stage. So I haven't tried it, and I don't know if that will necessarily enhance my performance. So I feel like those are things you should partake of when you're relaxing. And I don't treat this as leisure, if you know what I mean. Like the performance is not leisure. But these are other things that you do in your leisure. So I think that demarcation is something that I've there was once when I think I had a few beers when I went on stage, and it was in my own college. It was like a guest performance, and that's when I realized I really suck when I'm like tipsy. So not doing that again.
We are almost at the end. What is your to future generations, if you have to say something about performance and any kind of advice or tips? Or
I think my advice would be to find your sound and find what you want to say through your music. Because it's very easy to get carried away by being just a cover musician. Because there's lots of people there who are cover musicians on Instagram, for instance, with like huge followings. But when they do live shows, they may not necessarily have the same turnout that their social media following messages. And the reason for that is because people don't just want to hear the same stuff that they've already heard. So it's very important for musicians to find that space for themselves and find their musical purpose. So for example, if you're a singer, apart from being able to sing other songs well, you should start exploring how your voice can be part of something original, be it your own composition or collaborate with someone to make new music, right? And once you start doing that, that gives you the opportunity to test it out on an audience. And like I said, live music is actually practice. It makes you a better performer. So every musician should actually, even studio musicians should prepare for live acts and definitely dabble with it, because that gives them a special, it improves their skill, it improves their appreciation of audiences, and it's a real connection with their audiences. So my advice would be to definitely consider live performance as one of the things that you're doing very early in your life when you're exploring music, and continue to do it instead of waiting for like a time when you will start performing live. The other thing is, like I said, explore your musical sensibilities and find your musical purpose, and eventually bring that out in your live concerts.
There's one question I forgot which just came to my mind. So performing on stage can be physically very demanding sometimes. And do you have any kind of fitness routine that you follow? And
I want to, but I absolutely don't. And I also have scoliosis, so I can't stand for a long time. So sometimes I actually just request the organizers to have a bar stool or something. So the maximum I've gone is 2.5 hours of performance without, sitting. But I don't have a fitness regime. I just have like I said, a diet, which I take care of. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm like the last person who should be asking about fitness, because I'm not very fit.
I know that different people have different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but I also think fitness is important for musicians, because it is a very sedentary lifestyle for studio musicians. So especially instrumentalists who are like session artists, right? It's just sitting and playing for hours or programmers.
But we're not talking about that. We are talking about live music.
No, but even them, they eventually perform live, right? So it is still like a lot of it is a sedentary lifestyle. So apart from especially like musicians who travel a lot for music, right? They've got odd sleeping hours, odd food schedules. So it's important for musicians to take care of their health and have I don't know, a music 9 to 5 is something that should be aspirational rather than, glorifying this whole middle of the night musician trope.
Yeah. Okay. The last question. If there was, we are talking about the essence of performance. Yeah. If you had one underlying philosophy to define what the essence of a performance is, what would you?
I'll just
I know it's a
deep question.
You don't.
Okay. Firstly, it is a privilege to be performing to an audience. Not everybody gets it. You may get a stage, but you may not get an audience. So when you have both, you have to realize that you are very special when you have those things. And so you should aspire to be the truest self at that point, and be true to your music. I think that will come out, and just appreciate the connection that you form with your audience at that point. So it is, I think, like I said, I think we've spoken about this earlier. It is a sort of meditation, and it's also a sort of intimate human connection that you make with people you don't necessarily know or may not interact with ever again. So, and people still remember gigs that they went to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because of exactly this, the energy that a musician is able to create and that connection that they form. And that's a precious thing. So I would say be appreciative of the fact that you are able to do this, and and then give it your best.
That's so beautifully put. Thank you, Vijay.
Thanks, Arvind.
This has been a total pleasure and so informative for me also. So
likewise, it was great being on this.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to Stage Matters. There will be a new episode every Tuesday. So if you liked what you heard, please come back.